do things a little different. We're going to do things a little differently this time around because we've got an exciting afternoon. I think that will benefit everybody. So I just want to remind everybody, we're not going to do the introductions. So if you can, in the chat box, put your name and your organization. Additionally, if we have time at the end for questions, please put those questions in the chat box as well. And if we can get to them, we will. If we don't, then we will compile sort of a survey to get to the funders and get that information back out to you. I want to start by thanking all of our funders who are in the room today for spending the afternoon with us. This is a moderated non-solicitation meeting, but it's here to really help you understand what the priorities and eligibility requirements of the different funders might be. But before we jump into that, I want to thank those of you who completed the survey on COVID's impact, particularly on our sector. We have, in our January meeting, we did have some breakout rooms and discussions on how COVID has impacted different age groups that have special needs. So I want to start by presenting that data for our funders, but I think you'll find it really interesting that there's some consistencies that we're seeing across all of our organizations. And some of them are newer issues that didn't necessarily exist pre-COVID. So I'm going to start off by presenting the data. I think if I can move my slides. You would think after 2 years of doing this, we, Okay, here we go. So the mission of SNAC, for our funders who may not be familiar with us, is we are a collective impact project that was spearheaded by Unicorn Children's Foundation to provide a comprehensive integrated system of care that supports and connects individuals with special needs and disabilities and their families to community-based services and opportunities. This group, this coalition, grew out of a community needs assessment that we conducted in 2015 to really understand the landscape of services and supports in Palm Beach County and to identify gaps and barriers that collectively we could come together to work to address. We really envision that Palm Beach County will be a community that comes together to enhance the lives of individuals with special needs and disabilities and provide opportunities for meaningful engagement throughout the county. So our objectives with SNAC, we do meet monthly. It previously was in person, but now for the last almost 2 years, we've been meeting virtually, which I think has some advantages. I mean, we missed the face-to-face interaction and we missed the ability to break out into task forces and really tackle some big complex issues. But the Zoom has allowed us to reduce our commute time, making more people available. And so we've seen some really consistent engagement through the virtual option. So our objectives through SNAC are to create new connections, strengthen leadership and alliances, share resources, maximize effective use of community resources, identify new strategies for improving the quality of life, and engaging in collaborative action planning to solve the problems. Some of the issues that we are talking about, such as housing, that's a complex problem that no single organization is going to be able to solve if we're going to provide the wraparound services. So it's really coming together and engaging in this collaborative planning. So for today's data, we have two methods that we use to collect the data. One was the qualitative data gathered from our SNAC members in the breakout sessions in January. Then we have some quantitative data that we gathered via electronic surveys disseminated to our SNAC members. We had 40 participants respond during the month of January. So keep in mind, January, we were still seeing an escalation in the COVID cases. We're now starting to see that decline. I believe Palm Beach County, the positivity rate today is about 12%. But we went through a period of time, and this is one reason where SNAC was really helpful, is we were all flying the plane while we were building it. The data, the information kept changing. OSHA wasn't staying consistent with CDC or updating consistently with CDC. So we've all been able to share resources in terms of developing COVID protocols and really trying to help get our community connected safely. So that's been a great resource for everybody. So in terms of the qualitative data, in the birth to 5 group, we talked about the fact that there's no vaccine available for this age group. So what a lot of our providers are seeing is a decrease in caseloads, which is going to have really deleterious effects down the road, because we know that early identification and intervention are critical to the best outcomes later in life. So if families are hesitant to allow providers into their home or seeking services outside because there is no vaccine available, what's going to happen to these individuals as they enter elementary school, as they transition into adulthood? So that's unfortunately a challenge that we acknowledge, but there's really not a lot that we can do about that one at this time. We've also talked about the fact that there aren't enough providers or facilities to place individuals with an increased need for services among this age group. We talked about 3-year-old classrooms having 30 students in because we have shortages in staffing. We have increased staff burnout. What can I, hold on. Oh, go back. Sorry, I'm going the wrong direction. Oh, no, I didn't. I just actually skipped a slide. My apologies for my lack of driving ability today. Sorry, I'm unable to actually see. Okay. Carrie, do you know how I can minimize my toolbar?
You can move it.
Okay, one moment.
Sorry.
There we go. Perfect. Thank you. Okay. But we also, the silver lining is virtual services did increase accessibility to services with the birth to 5 population. I know in particular, I spoke with one early intervention provider, and she actually found that virtual services actually was more beneficial than in person, because she was actually able to get into the person's home without being in their home and really seeing what the daily life challenges were for the families. All right, gonna have to move again. And I've lost my. So from the trenches, when we've talked to parents about what it is their needs are, they've talked about needing improved information and referral on where to access or seek services. They need assistance with enrollment and childcare. They need summer camp options for those with behavioral challenges. Families are requesting more direct support. They'd like to see expanded therapeutic services, emotional support for families, behavioral support needs for their children, and really that social emotional learning, which has really become a hot topic of conversation. The impacts of that isolation has had on families really needs to be addressed. When we talk about our school-age children, we're hearing about staffing shortages and staffing turnover. I believe in Miami-Dade, we just had a new superintendent that took the reins, who's willing to step into the classroom. I know we have one of our junior board members who's now been employed as a substitute teacher. So the staffing shortages is a real challenge, and it's something we're going to need to look at going forward and coming up with more creative solutions to address that. Again, the social emotional learning is impacted. Somebody mentioned that, second graders have never in their life experienced a normal school year. So that's going to be something to take into account. The mental health of students needs to become a top priority, and the difficulty to accessing therapeutic services to that are income-based, especially for working class families. So we might need to start looking at adjusting what our eligibility requirements are in terms of the poverty level, because working class families are just really being squeezed out. In transition and adulthood, this group wasn't as focused on the challenges. They were really focused more on coming up with the solutions. But again, we're seeing the staffing shortages, we're seeing the turnover. There's low residency in supported living. During COVID, 105 group homes have closed, which leaves a lot of parents with lack of opportunities. But most agencies reported doing well with the shift to virtual when dealing with this age group. So one of the things that they discussed was possibly, can we start looking at using internships with universities to address some of the staffing shortages? So we're all going to have to start thinking creatively and out of the box. So this is our quantitative data that we put out to our members to ask or to answer. So we talked about the ways that current COVID is currently impacting their organization. Again, this is January's data, but you'll see the most significant was the ability to provide services as well as increased expenses and decreased revenue. So we're all being tasked to do a lot more with a lot more needs, with a lot fewer resources. We asked them if they've seen a change in revenue since February of 2020. The majority have seen a decrease in the revenue sources. A couple actually saw an increase in sources, and I think a lot of that is due to the flexibility of the funders and really opening up and wanting to support their partners. We asked what type of expenses they've seen associated with the pandemic. Our most significant was increased cleaning supplies, PPE, and the technology. Not everybody was set up with the technology to really jump right into that virtual, so organizations had to play some catch up. I was really surprised to see that there wasn't a lot of payroll expenses associated with the pandemic. We asked if the organization saw a change in the number of clients since February of 2020. Really were split, and I think it was dependent on age group. 40% of us saw an increase, 40% of us saw a decrease in the number of clients. Has your organization shifted to online and virtual services? I'm quite surprised that 26% did not do that, but the bulk of organizations that are addressing special needs issues did make that jump to the online virtual, which then it also has its own challenges because not all of our clients are really able to effectively utilize technology to accessing services. They may not understand really, some of us who can be technologically adept, or we all are challenged with being able to navigate Zoom. So when you throw in special needs or disabilities, that can be further exacerbated. We asked how the organization shifted their service delivery. Fortunately, none of the respondents said that they had to completely close and end their services. The biggest thing was using video chat platforms, and many of our providers had to start introducing new services to meet the changing needs of our clients through the pandemic. Many of us had to provide limited services within our facility. So while we didn't completely shut down, we opened on a very limited basis. And again, you'll see very few people were providing services in the home, and we're not sure if that's a demand issue or that organizations and entities weren't allowing their professionals to go into the homes. So we talked about, at this point in time, how disruptive is COVID on your organization? The majority of us are pretty resilient. We said that there is some disruption to our organization, but it's manageable. About 27% said there was a significant disruption and they expect return to services to be difficult. Another 17% said there was a significant disruption and they expect to bounce back quickly. And as we all know, that not a single one of us had no disruptions as a result of COVID. We talked about how concerned they are about the following as it relates to their clients, agency, and staff. And you'll see here in red, we've got a lot of very concerned individuals. We're seeing widening disparities amongst our population. So those who had access are still able to access services, but those who are underserved have become even more underserved. The economy in general, 77% said they were very concerned with the economy. 85% were concerned with the community in general. But these are the numbers I like to see. 90% are very concerned about the well-being and mental health of their clients. And I would hope, being in the human services field, that would be the case. 80% are concerned with the physical health and safety of clients. 80% concerned with staff or volunteers becoming ill. 85%, and this is something that we keep seeing consistently, a consistent theme, is concerns about the well-being and mental health of their staff. Agencies' finances and financial sustainability was 72% reported very concerned. 53%, again, we put our clients' health above our own, but only 53% that they had concerns about their own health and well-being. We've got good trust with our employees because very few, less than half had a concern with staff productivity. 50% were very concerned with the staffing shortages. And again, take ourselves out of it, 44% had no concerns about their job security. The agency's biggest concern at this time, the winner was cash flow and revenue generation, and then an inability to find or hire qualified staff. So we're being tasked with doing more with less. And then in third place came the cancellation of programs and events. And that's become very exhausting for staff members, for agencies, because it seems like as soon as we see a glimmer of hope, we're ready to jump back in, then all of a sudden it's like, well, no, now we have to postpone it, or we have to cancel it, or we have to rethink it. So that's been a heavy burden for many of the organizations in the coalition. So we asked them basically what they would like funders to know. So support for administrative cost and capacity building are significant needs. We've had difficulty with credentialing agents, and I don't know how the funders can help this, and neither did they, but I just did want to address it. Credentialing agents at the state level are impacting our abilities to hire qualified staff. For example, I know at Unicorn, we've been trying to work with the Department of Vocational Rehabilitation, and their system's been undergoing changes during the entire COVID, and they're not even taking on new providers, which means we can't use that as a resource for providing services. Providing funding for PPE testing and enhanced cleaning, that's an additional expense that we haven't had to really think about before. Being flexible with funding parameters and offer non-program type of grants. So traditionally, we see where you put an RFP out, or there's a grant notice out, and a lot of times the organizations feel like they are having to develop new programs to meet the funding requirements. But what we're asking now is really to be flexible with those funding parameters. And I've seen it throughout the last 2 years. And I know there's a funders forum, and they definitely have become flexible, but also funding flexibility with reporting outcomes. So if an agency has low enrollment and they're not able to meet their numbers because of that low enrollment, really looking at the quality of service versus the quantity of service. The big topic was support for the mental wellness of staff. Again, we've got people working that are being burned out, and the mental wellness component is not necessarily being addressed. So if some of those funding opportunities really could go to supporting the mental wellness of staff members. We need funding to support technology implementation. Technology is not cheap. We're all learning new ways of engaging and interacting. Not all agencies are able to offset those costs. So if we could have support from funders, that would be helpful. Funders should ask how things have changed and how the partners have adapted during COVID. Again, just increasing conversations so that we're understanding priorities and how those priorities are shifting in real time. And I think we've got great collaboration in this county, and most of our funders are open to those types of conversations. So that was our data in a nutshell. This is my my contact information. If you're interested in staying up to speed with what's going on with SNAC, we do have a Facebook page. You can follow us, like us. We do share a weekly email out with all of our providers, different activities that are going on. And that's the best way to keep up with what is going on in Palm Beach County. I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank those who participated in our survey. I hope that gives some more insight as to what it looks like in the trenches, and happy to be part of the group. So at this point, I will turn it over to Kelsey to start the panel, because I'm sure you all would rather hear what the funders have to say than what I have to say. So thank you.
Oh, Sharon, thank you for that. But I have to say that as I was listening to you present this data, which is the first time I've heard it as well, I was really struck by, number one, the innovation of SNAC and how you really have this leadership role in bringing the community together around this issue in a way that I think serves the community of service providers, the community of people affected by disabilities, and the community of funders who truly want to help. So number one, thank you for bringing all these stakeholders together. And number two, doing that background work to give us these insights today, because I think even some of our service providers, when we're all in the trenches and in our silos, you don't always realize how many challenges you share just trying to meet the need every day. So thank you for that. Thank you for bringing us all together, for our audience members to be here. For our funders, we have an amazing panel. We're so excited to jump in. And thank you for having me to help moderate. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Kelsey Johnson, and I am one half of Bambu Nonprofit Strategies. We work with small to mid-sized nonprofits to build smart and efficient fundraising strategies, especially for nonprofits that maybe don't have their own in-house development team. We've had the pleasure of working with Unicorn Children's Foundation for 3 years, I believe. So we had our pre-pandemic and then our in the pandemic, and now, we're kind of moving into that next chapter. And not only Unicorn, but I know of several of our audience members as well. So we're glad to have been part of this with you and to be here with you today. We're going to introduce our panelists in just a moment and jump right into having them share their insights. But before we do, just 2 quick housekeeping notes. Number one is if we have time at the end of the meeting, we would like to share some questions from the audience. We're not sure how it's going to shake out, but if you could please, any questions that come to you as we're chatting today, put them in the chat box. And if we have time, we'll ask them at the end. If we don't have time, we'll compile them and send a survey or a little chat out to our panelists so that we can hopefully get some feedback to share with you at a later date. Second is that we do have a nice full panel today. So our order of operations is going to be that I'll ask the question and we'll invite our panelists to share their feedback in alphabetical order by the organization. So that may help everybody kind of be queued up for how we're going to roll out our questions today. We're going to start with introductions, and if all of our panelists, as I introduce you all, if you could share your name, your role, and the organization you're representing today, that would be so fantastic. And Brittany Frazier, will begin with you, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brittany Frazier. I serve as the Grants Officer and Strategic Initiative Manager at Allegany Franciscan Ministries. We're headquartered in Tampa Bay, but we serve 6 counties throughout the state of Florida.
Thank you, Brittany. And moving on to Randy Palo.
Hi, Randy Palo with Children's Services Council, Palm Beach County. I'm the Director of Community Planning and Partnerships here, and also facilitate a group of funders that meets quarterly, and we've had a group meeting on COVID monthly, although originally it was weekly. So hopefully a sign that it is lessening is that we're only meeting monthly now.
Linda Roman? Oh, Linda, I think you might still be on mute.
Hi, everybody. My name is Linda Roman, Community Impact Officer with the Community Foundation for Palm Beach and Martin Counties. Glad to be here.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Christine Raymond?
Hi, I'm Christine Raymond. I am the Executive Director and General Counsel of Extraordinary Charities here in Palm Beach County. We run a nonprofit co-working space that's home to 9 separate organizations, as well as create a network that supports smaller nonprofits in Palm Beach County.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Beth Johnston?
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Beth Johnston. I'm the Senior Director of Regional Business Development for Florida Blue, covering 8 counties from Okeechobee down through the Keys. Thank you.
Thank you. Jillian Vukusic?
Hi, everybody. I'm Jillian. I'm the Executive Director of Lost Tree Foundation.
Thank you. Megan Parnell?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Megan Parnell. I'm the Manager of Planning and Evaluation with Palm Beach County Community Services.
Terrific. Thank you, Megan. Tammy Fields?
Good afternoon, and thanks for including me. I am Tammy Fields. I am the Director of the Palm Beach County Youth Services Department and co-chair Birth to 22 United Brighter Futures.
Randy Sheed?
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Randy Scheid. I am the Chief Strategy Officer with Quantum Foundation. Thanks for the opportunity to be here.
Wonderful. And Nina Bershadker?
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Nina Bershadker. I'm the Executive Director of the Taft Foundation, and I'm thrilled to be here. Thanks for having me.
And last but certainly not least, Shayeen Weatherspoon.
Hello, everyone. I am Shayeen Weatherspoon. I'm the Director of Community Impact here at United Way of Palm Beach County, and I manage all of our special needs initiatives.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. So we're going to dive right in. And our first question is, we'd like you to tell us about your organization's interest in the special needs community. What are some projects or initiatives that you're proud of having accomplished in the past, or that you're currently working on to serve folks affected by disabilities? And Brittany, if we could circle back to you to start us off.
Yes, absolutely. So transparently, Allegany Franciscan Ministries, we have always served vulnerable and marginalized communities, but within the last fiscal year, we have become more intentional. So with our TAL grant program, which supports smaller nonprofits with capacity building, we have identified 3 particular communities that we want to serve and support financially. And those 3 communities are BIPOC, which stands for Black, Indigenous, People of Color, the LGBTQ+ community, as well as people with disabilities. That has been a community that we have ignored transparently, but again, we are becoming more intentional in making sure that they receive dollars from us. And as far as a project, we don't necessarily have a project, but like I mentioned before, our TAL grant program is aimed for those particular organizations who needs funding with capacity building.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for that. Randy Palo, would you like to follow up?
Yeah, sure. So Children's Services Council, the vast majority of our funding is focused on prevention and early intervention. So we've built a early childhood system of care that involves maternal child health services with the main focus on healthy babies in the first place, and an early childhood education system that really focuses on school readiness. So in fact, the vast majority of our funding does go for those 2 early childhood systems of care, including assessments and the funding of the Early Steps program. One of the things I think we're proud of that's very specific to children with special needs is the Special Equipment Fund that we fund through the United Way. That's actually existed for over 30 years. providing special equipment to children who've kind of fallen through the cracks. In other words, all the other ways that they may pay insurance, the school district, everybody else. When all of that has fallen through, we still have a pot of funding that's available that provides the equipment that children need. So that's something we've been very proud, and it's really one of the longest standing things that we have funded as an organization right from our very beginning. We also provide some funding also through United Way for respite care and for after school programming. And we provide funding to the special needs helpline for 211.
Wow, that's terrific. Thank you, Randy. Linda.
Hi, everybody. So the Community Foundation funds special needs projects as they fit within our impact areas, which are post-secondary and career pathways, positive youth development, and community revitalization. And we funded quite a lot of agencies and great programs. Over the last 2 years, we've funded, I think it's 11 programs in those 3 impact areas. Most of them fell within post-secondary career and positive youth development. So a lot of programs that we fund work on getting people with disabilities into employment. We are now embarking on a new strategic planning process. So our focus areas may shift a bit in the coming year, and we'll have more information about that as things shape up.
Excellent. We will stay tuned. Thank you. Christine Raymond.
Yeah, so gosh, about 25% of the organizations that are part of our network work in some capacity, either with children with disabilities or adults with disabilities. And over the past few years, I think we've seen our focus shift from really meeting just basic needs to recognizing the harmful effects of a lack of socialization on our persons with disabilities. So in our co-working space, we've got this great facility now that we're able to host bingo nights and movie nights. And once a month, the building turns into a nightclub for adults with disabilities, just to provide those social opportunities and really realizing how critical that is to healthy individuals. Something that we're excited about, something that's coming up, is we have this beautiful commercial kitchen in our building, and we're starting to work with several of our organizations in creating a partnership that will increase employment among our adults with disabilities. So culinary arts, hospitality, those kinds of things.
Terrific. I love all this innovation we're hearing about.
We are having fun.
Love it. Beth Johnston with Florida Blue.
Good afternoon. One thing I needed to explain is our parent company is GuideWell. GuideWell is a health solutions company. So important to know that to us, mental and physical health are on the same plane, right? One affects the other. We look at them both as a high need. So one of the, before COVID even happened, one of the areas that we invested in was what we call community specialists. They're educated with a social work degree. They're in our Florida Blue centers. We have a Florida Blue center here in Palm Beach County that sits on Congress right by Boynton Beach Mall. You do not have to be a Florida Blue member to use this service. That's what's so great about it. You don't have to have our insurance. So what these community specialists are responsible for is anyone can walk in there and ask to see the community specialist and say they're having an issue with food security or housing, or they have a child that's come home from a university in the state and are experiencing mental health issues. These community specialists have all the resources. Matter of fact, your organization, some of them may even be on the list, where the community specialist can sit down with that person and actually help them through with whatever they're going through at that current time. So, you know, that's very innovative. Sometimes I forget I work for an insurance company because we do so many things in that space. But I would say our community specialists, and that program is about 3 years old now. God, I forget, COVID's 2 years already. They are truly that connection to community resources for the community. I mean, it can be anything: employment, substance abuse, whatever's going on, that community specialist can assist with.
Wow, that's an incredible program. Thank you so much, Beth.
You're welcome.
Can I ask you, how do you reach out to the community, being that, it's been around for 3 years and you've had COVID and
Well, during COVID, they did it remotely.
Okay.
But we had a whole year before COVID hit
Mhm.
to do the outreach, to get the information out there. Once COVID hit, they still did their work. And probably it was even greater than it was before COVID even happened. But during COVID, New Directions Behavioral Health, which Florida Blue owns, I believe, 51% of now, we offered free counseling services to anybody who needed it.
That's great.
Anyone, they could just call, and we did a whole campaign around that.
Very cool. Thank you, Beth.
Thanks, Kelsey.
Jillian with Lost Tree.
Hi there. So Lost Tree's been around for 40 plus years. We're a neighborhood foundation, and looking at most of the registrants, we're familiar and or have relationships with your organization. So I was really pleased to see that as well. We fund in 4 areas: health, hunger, homelessness, and education. And special needs population has always been a targeted population for Lost Tree. I'll talk a little bit, I think, down the way about how we learn about what's happening in the community, but knowing all of your organizations, I don't dare pick a favorite project, but we are a capital funder. So we're doing everything from bricks and mortar, building, renovations, technology. We've done a lot of technology with some of your agencies. So we really are looking at sort of the hard costs or hard tangible items that, agencies need to operate when it comes to your programs.
Yep, and going back to that survey that Sharon shared with us earlier, those types of dollars, those capacity building dollars that I know Brittany mentioned earlier, those are sometimes rarer for our organizations to find. So thank you to Lost Tree, to Allegany, to our other funders for having that broader vision. Megan Parnell with Palm Beach County Community Services Department.
Hi. So we fund agencies through our financially assisted agencies funding, and we have 3 categories that we have recently shifted to align with our Board of County Commissioners' priorities. So those are housing and homelessness, economic stability and self-sufficiency, and then behavioral health. And then we've realigned our special needs category under each of those categories, because we want folks that have special needs to be able to access each of those systems of care. And we felt that was the best way that we could include them in those needs.
I love that inclusivity. Very nice. Tammy Fields.
Similar to community services, we fund through our community-based agency program, and that is based on the priorities that were established under the Youth Master Plan, which is health and wellness, community stressors, including safety and justice, social and emotional learning, parental supports, educational supports, and economic access. We find that there are definitely programs in all of those areas where we have agencies that are funding individuals or families with special needs in all of those categories. And including supports like the American Association of Caregiving Youth, who is supporting youth who are supporting people with special needs within their household. We also, one of the things that we did a few years back is we found that there were a lot of kids with special needs that were not able to attend summer camps. They weren't fully accessible to them. So we started, along with Children's Services Council, a special category of summer camps for children with special needs, and we paid more than double for those camp scholarships than we do for our traditional camps, understanding that the student to staff ratio needs to be different and there may be other needs. So that was one of the things that we've been able to accomplish, and would love to expand that even further. And then additionally, as a direct service provider, we provide a lot of mental and behavioral health services that are open to anyone, any family with child 0 to 22.
Thank you, Tammy. And Randy Scheid with Quantum Foundation.
Thanks. So I think probably a lot of you all are familiar with Quantum Foundation, who we are. So I won't bore you too much with details like that. I did look at the registration list as well, and I see there's a lot of folks that some we work with currently, some we've worked with in the past. So great to see some of you all on here. The main, I guess, just 2 quick points. The main thing about Quantum is we came from a hospital. We came from JFK Hospital about 22 years ago. So the main core of our work has always been related to access to care. And that, part of that is looking at underserved populations, underinsured, uninsured populations. We also do some work over the last few years trying to build up the healthcare workforce in the county, understanding that there's not enough providers to take care of folks. We don't focus on, we don't have a distinct focus on any specific population per se. We try to keep it open because we work throughout the county. We don't want to draw there, have folks not be able to apply it for us for certain, for certain populations. I mean, we have projects that focus on, infants. We've got ones that focus on seniors. It really just depends on what sort of applications we get and what sort of opportunities are out there in the community. So, certainly many of you on here could be folks that we would have the ability to work with. So, yeah, I'll leave it at that for now. Thanks.
Thanks, Randy. Nina with Taft.
Sure, thanks, Kelsey. So the Taft Foundation, we're a private foundation, and I'm probably the oddball out here in that we are based in New York, but we also fund in Southeast Florida, in particular Miami and Broward and Palm Beach counties. And so I too see some of our grantees here, which is wonderful. Taft's mission is really to help people with intellectual and developmental disabilities specifically lead fulfilling lives. That's across their whole life, so it's not specific to any age group. And we really think about our grant making in terms of 3 core pillars that we call access, thrive, and include. Access is really about information and resources, connecting families to information and resources, including legal advocacy, early intervention. It kind of runs the gamut. Thrive is really about setting up an individual with IDD for success in life. And so that's about increasing quality comprehensive transition supports for transition-aged youth, but then also ensuring that they have opportunities and pathways available to them in adulthood, everything ranging from employment to post-secondary programs or quality, and we call them reimagined day programs. And then include is really about building inclusive communities so that individuals with IDD can feel a sense of belonging and feel connected and be of value in their community. And that there we have a focus on the arts, but also include health and wellness, for example, and other things. In thinking about the question of what are we proud of, there is so much. We have been at this about 10 years now. We have about 60 active grantees in any given year. We just recently did a look back and with our funding have helped to launch over 35 programs in that decade. So there is a lot of work that has happened. I will say, and a nod to some of the grantees here in the audience, some of the current work that we're really excited about is actually with 2 of the CARD programs that we fund, both at FAU and at NSU CARD, really about understanding the data around the underserved populations. Who are we reaching? Who are we not reaching? Where do we need better outreach services? How do we ensure that everyone has the education and awareness around IDD so that we are not missing as many, in particular, Black and Brown kids as we are currently. And so that is some great work, but there are just so many. I could go on and on.
Oh, we thank you for supporting so many great partners who are out there doing the work and coming along with them for that. And Shaeen, can you tell us about the United Way of Palm Beach County's work in this?
Yes, I would love to. So United Way of Palm Beach County, we have a long history of involvement with the special needs community. It's one of our 7 key investment areas. And as Randy mentioned earlier, Children's Services Council is an amazing partner in supporting several of our key initiatives. We currently invest in programs that provide respite services and out-of-school services to children with special needs. And we also fund programs that provide supported employment opportunities for adults with special needs. We currently lead the Palm Beach County Respite Committee, which is a collaboration with a lot of key stakeholders. Many of you are here today. And we are really dedicated to raising awareness about respite services and increasing access to all the children and families in need in our community. And we're also very proud to administer the Special Needs Equipment Fund. We are able to provide access to durable medical equipment for children with special needs who would have no other means of accessing the equipment that they need.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Shaeen. So, you spoke about needs, and I think all of our organizations spoke about addressing needs in different ways. So that leads to our next question, which is, how does your organization learn about the need and seek to understand the challenges that are specific to IDD and our special needs communities? Brittany, we'll circle back to you to lead us off for that one.
Absolutely. So I would say, honestly, just by listening. We are privileged to have ears in 6 counties, South Florida, the Palm Beach area, and Tampa Bay. And we know that this community sometimes is ignored, and we're all about equity. So we know that they need additional resources than other communities. So we show up that way. In addition, being that we are new to this space, we're open to conversation. I welcome for new community partners to reach out to me and have a conversation just to share with me what's going on, what are you doing, what are the alignments with Allegany and the work that you're doing. So we have to make sure that we listen to the community and what their needs are.
I love that. So it sounds like a big part of your process is organizations reaching out to you directly to inform you about something that they think is important. Would you say that that's like a primary way that you're gathering information at this stage?
Yes, especially being that this particular population is new to us, so we don't know who exists out in community. So we do welcome them to reach out to us to just share what's going on. But we do have information available on our website as it pertains to the eligibility requirements, just to make sure that there is some alignment.
Sure. Thank you, Brittany. Appreciate that. Randy Palo, how does the Children's Services Council of PBC seek to learn more, educate itself, and understand the challenges that are out there?
Yeah, well, as far as the system I referred to, the early childhood system of all those services, we meet regularly with our providers. We also have a variety of initiatives. We're really trying to get more resident feedback, and we're hiring a position that's going to focus on that. And we're really trying to connect much more at the resident level. Specific to families with special needs, we really actually rely heavily on United Way. And one of the reasons our funding really goes primarily to United Way for the various programs I mentioned that we fund, and a position that we fund at United Way is to take that lead role as it relates to families with children with special needs.
So you're really looking for, in your partnership with United Way, sort of finding out and diving into that lived experience, hearing from folks with IDD themselves through some, aggregates or surveys or however that mechanism might be.
Right.
Okay, thank you for that. Linda, the Community Foundation, you do a lot of research over there.
We do. We do. So we also do a lot of listening, and we listen to our funded partners all the time. We have ears to the ground in Palm Beach and Martin counties. We also, through the funding process, I read, in the last 3 months, I read about 90 proposals, and some of them were from special needs. And so whether or not they're funded, we always learn from what you're telling us in your applications. And we encourage people to give us a call or email and let us know what's happening, what your needs are, what your questions are, and the door is open.
I know you are, the Community Foundation is particularly thorough about building relationships with its funders too. So I think, you know, I've heard that as things evolve, you can have those ongoing conversations.
Definitely.
That's always helpful. Christine with Extraordinary Charities, how are you learning about the challenges in the community?
Yeah, I think we're lucky. You know, we intentionally keep our network of organizations fairly small so that we are able to provide those personal connections and hear those stories. And, you know, especially with all that goes on in the building, you know, I personally am able to have a front row seat to the programs that are happening here and to the needs of the community. And just, it's really been quite a gift just to be able to have conversations and just to witness all the exciting things that are going on with our organization. So I consider myself real lucky in that respect.
Absolutely. And I know the folks at the Nonprofit Resource Center feel the exact same way. And it's true, being able to pass each other in the hallways is a perspective that's really special and unique. Beth with Florida Blue, I know you've told us a little bit about how you're in the community already, but tell us more about how that might inform.
Sure. Being a larger company, we have a lot of resources for when it comes to research, right? So we have a lot of data, but data is only the start of it because I spend a lot of time in the community also. So it's data plus listening, plus the visual part of it. So we learn in a lot of different ways, and we can break our data down to zip code. So we pretty much know in each zip, individuals with disabilities and the numbers that are being experienced, right? So we're able to really dive deep on that. We're obviously very fortunate able to do that. We have at the company a health equity officer, and that's relatively new, Dr. Tice, and she totally focuses on health equity across the state of Florida, which this whole thing kind of started when COVID started, right? And making sure that everybody, making sure there was equitable, everything available to everyone, not just a certain subset of people. The one thing I did want to mention is through our foundation, we have 3 areas of focus. Food security, by the way, that grant just opened today. If any of you are interested, it's a 4-year grant, ranges between 80 and 100,000 a year. And it just opened today with a deadline on March 31st. The other one is mental well-being. That grant has not opened up yet. And the last one is health equity. And that grant has not opened up yet, but they will soon. So this is how we seek to understand, is through all the work we do internally and externally, and then you marry the two together. Thank you.
No, thank you. Qualitative and quantitative, being able to have, like you said, the scope of your organization gives you a much different level of access to data, and that's provides a different level of insight. So thank you for that. Jillian with Lost Tree, can you tell us more?
Sure. So we primarily run an annual grants program, and there's a deadline every year of August 15th. We really rely on our agency partners. So if we're not getting applications to serve the population, we're not responding. And this is a very responsive program, not so much a proactive. So while I do seek out and encourage conversations, we do rely on you to get into the process as well. I always encourage agencies to give me a call, typically May, June, with the August deadline, so I can talk through what it is you're thinking about applying for and help you develop your application. And what I will say that's important about that, I think many of you know, we have a strong volunteer force that, our teams that come out to visit. We end up with over 100 residents from Lost Tree out making site visits. It's a very thoughtful, deliberate process. So for example, when we are we have a grants committee meeting this week, and we will specifically be looking at homeless services. So we put all like organizations and requests together so we can start looking at the system of care. And that's led to some pretty major long-term significant initiatives. And so we have some work going on in the hunger space for many years, education, literacy related. We have a 13-year initiative. We're working on an 8 to 9-year initiative related to health. So, and that has come out of from this process, starting to understand the themes among your organizations. You know, if you all are seeing similar challenges, like the survey presentation actually was a great way for us to, I think, kind of open the conversation. So if we're seeing similar challenges where we may be able to provide some significant investment over a period of time that affects all of you and helps, you know, you provide better services, we'll start looking at that. But we really do rely on the information. We look to you all as the experts in field to, you know, let us know what those trends really are. So thank you for having us here.
You know, and I think there's something to be said for that, because sometimes I know small organizations especially will feel discouraged if they, you know, put the effort into an application and it's not, you know, it's not funded for one reason or another. Obviously, you know, none of you can fund every request that crosses your threshold. But I think, you know, there's such a value in the education that it provides to you as funders to know what these service providers are experiencing, what they're trying to solve. So if it's heartening to anyone in audience land, that it really does provide value to the funders to hear about these challenges from your perspective. Even if you can't be successful with your funding needs this year, you know, keep going back, keep having the conversation, because it's how we've heard this already today. So many of our funders are learning about what you're working on.
And Kelsey, if I can just add to that, because I think that's a great point. I just had this conversation last week with an agency. Some of our most significant grant awards started with no's. So, and it was the agencies that said, we could say, it's not going to work, here's why, and here are all the things that we want to see and we're happy to help you with. And they've led to some really, you know, positive things.
Yes.
So
it's important. Thank you. Thank you. I'm so glad that a funder could say that. Sometimes people don't believe me when I say that. I promise it's part of the process. Megan, with the Palm Beach County Community Services Department, what can you add to us about how you're learning about the community's needs?
I think it's pretty similar to things that folks have already shared, but we do have our annual cycle that we go through. So usually in the summer, July, August, we hold community conversations where we're looking to hear from agencies that have received funding, and then also just the community, the individuals that are in need of services. And we take that information along with doing a scan of data that's available to us, whether it's people that we've served in the past through the funded agencies or any trends, national data. We pull that all together to really focus on what our strategies and our priorities are going to be for that funding cycle. And then we also bring together a steering committee that's made up of subject matter experts that can help us guide us through that process, just acknowledging that we're not experts in everything and that we want to rely on those folks that are really close to the work and can help us understand what some of the needs are so that we don't miss anything.
Did I hear you right, Megan, that you're actually using those community conversations to guide your funding strategy, so that the things that you're investing in for the next cycle?
Yes, absolutely.
So people really need to be aware to take advantage of those community conversation opportunities, because it can lead directly to the dollar, how you're going to allocate your dollars.
Yes, absolutely.
Perfect. Okay. Tammy with Youth Services.
Well, I will add to that Birth to 22 does the community conversations each spring, and I am going to put in the chat the schedule and the flyer on how to sign up and attend those. That is part of our decision making. Part of our the way we get information is the data deck that is published every 2 years to see if there's changes in trends. We meet with the funders group and we hear a lot of the needs there. And then similar to, I think it was what Jillian said, when we do our funding cycles, at the end of it, if you have not been a successful proposer, we invite you to set a meeting to debrief with us, and we can go through the reasons why yours may not have scored at the top. Sometimes it's just a matter of we ran out of money, but we can, give some suggestions. And I have to say that those who have availed themselves of that opportunity are usually successful. I would say 90% of the time, they're usually successful the next time they apply.
Very much so. Very much so. Thank you for giving the organizations that opportunity to seek feedback. It's so helpful. Randy Scheid at Quantum.
Yeah, so one of the kind of the core values that we have as a staff is recognizing that we're not the experts and we don't have all the answers for everything, which that lends itself to a methodology that really looks to agencies and partners in the community, groups like this, individual nonprofits, other funders, and even other folks to kind of inform us about what's happening. We stay pretty well plugged in with a lot of different groups that are out there just so we can kind of have our finger on the pulse, if you will, as to what's going on in the community. But a couple of things I will say too, though, the way that we operate is anybody can reach out to us at any time. You can send us an email and ask for a meeting, or you can call us and ask for a meeting, and we always try to accommodate any requests. And those could be two purposes, just to update us on what you're doing, as well as to ask, or talk about some of the concepts that you're thinking about putting forward for funding. And we're open to both of those. There's no requirement that you do that before you submit an application, but we field those requests all the time, and 99% of the time, we are happy to meet with folks to hear what you're working on. So that's probably the best way for us to do that. In regards to that, the way that the applications work is we only make funding decisions 4 times a year, but anybody can submit an application at any time on our website. Okay, so you could in theory go on there tomorrow and submit an LOI for a funding cycle that's it's coming up. We've got rolling deadlines. There's 4 a year. They're all posted on our website. It does usually take about 3, 4, 5 months to get a final funding decision from us. So again, I always encourage folks, if you've got an idea or something you're working on that you want to talk to us about, do it sooner rather than later, because if you wait, you just might not get the chance to get in front of us, and vice versa. We may not have the opportunity to get in front of you. And sometimes it's always easier when you get an application in, if you're sort of familiar with it a little bit and kind of talk through some of the questions you may have, and some of the things may be addressed in the initial application. And, oftentimes that helps, as we all know too. And then the last thing that I'll say too, in terms of learning and how we ascertain what agencies are working on and what's working, is the reports that we get from the grants. Those are super important. We read through all those. We have a lot of them that come in, but we look through every single one. And one of the questions that we ask in there is, are there any, other than how well things are going, are there any challenges that you're facing as an agency or an operation? And encourage folks to be just transparent. And, we're not going to pull the money back if, you said you're going to serve 100 and you serve 99. It's really a learning opportunity for us at the end, midterm of a grant or at the end of a grant, to just hear how things are going. So, it's a continual learning process for us. And again, we try to be open and willing to learn from anybody who's working in this field.
That's a really good point, that the reporting process can be just as important as the application process in terms of learning about what's working and maybe what you're going to be interested in, further investing in down the road, or other, similar types of projects that might come across your desk that could even, form partnerships. Thank you for that, Randy. And Nina at Taft. I mean, this is your world. How, with serving people with disabilities and IDD, how are you doing the research on current challenges, what's working, that kind of thing?
Yes, thanks, Kelsey. I would echo a lot of what has been said in terms of both just really fundamentally believing that our partners on the ground are the experts in the field, and we really rely so deeply on our partners to understand the issues and what is going on. But I want to underscore what Randy just ended with in terms of the transparency around challenges. You know, as everyone here knows, there's this incredibly imbalanced power dynamic between funders and grantees. And that requires an enormous amount of effort to build trusting, transparent, and honest relationship with grantees, so that grantees really feel like they can say, you know what, that did not go as planned, and here's why, and here's how we're going to pivot, or maybe not, maybe this just isn't going to work. And we as funders need to allow room for that. This is incredibly complicated and long-term work. Change doesn't happen overnight. What I would add to all of this is that we strongly believe in site visits too, and that goes for our grantees as well as any new landscaping partners that we're exploring. It is part of our process always, in addition to reports, but we don't take unsolicited proposals, so it's a little tougher to get to us. We rely on a lot of word of mouth, as well as proactive outreach, that we do have an info at email. And we do respond to those where, you know, they are in our area. So we try to have as many conversations, but also to see the programs live in action. And to this point of listening, I mean, I think COVID has been a great example of real-time listening and pivoting and adjusting. I mean, I think we made so much more Gen Op grants than typical during this time. We, at least 2 pilots that we're currently funding emerged out of needs that were identified during COVID for transition-aged youth who were disconnected. So we do try to respond as grantees are sharing their stories also.
Thank you for that. And also just for that note on the power dynamic that's sort of inherent in the system. I think that probably a lot of our audience members have felt that as they're applying, as they're reporting. And it's really, I think, reassuring to hear from a funder that, you know, you're aware of it too, that, you know, they rely on you and your partnership to such a great extent to do the work that they do. And I think having sort of that open conversation or understanding as they're coming into it is so helpful. So thank you for that, Nina. And Shaeen, how about United Way? We've heard that you're important to some of our funders as they're gathering information and doing research. So can you tell us a little bit more insight on how you're doing it there?
Absolutely. You know, I think it's critical for us as funders to really understand the needs and the gaps in services in our community to make sure that we are investing in the correct strategies. So at United Way, you know, we are active in the community at community meetings or participating in task forces whenever possible, and just really listening to our funded programs and to our partner agencies when they tell us about their challenges and their needs. I know you guys are probably tired of getting our surveys, but we really do appreciate the input. And historically, we did that at site visits when we were able to go out to agencies and bring 800 volunteers and hear about all the things. Or when reports are due, we get a lot of feedback, you know, around that time. But we really are open to those conversations at any point because we want to hear from you and we want to learn about what you're experiencing and what you're dealing with because you are the experts and we do value the work that you do. In terms of our request for applications process, we typically would release one once a year around March, but as you all know, COVID turned life upside down. So we have not done that in a couple of years. But when we even set about developing the RFA, we are really involved in like a year-long process. We are deep diving into the issues that are relevant to the population. We are talking to you, we're talking to key stakeholders. We are really trying to solicit feedback from the people that are directly impacted by these issues. And also doing, you know, a data dive, really looking at existing data and existing needs assessments so that we're making sure that we are addressing the needs that are in the community.
Wow, so you're really, it's only a handful among our group today that are really focusing on that qualitative data or the quantitative data, as well as sort of the relationships that they're building with their funded partners and with the community partners at large. So you're really diving into, the numbers more so than some others. And I also think that that should be a lesson to all of us. Do the survey when it comes in, just take the time to make sure you're filling it out because it's helpful. Thank you. Thank you for that, Shane. This next question, it may be more relevant to some of our funders than others. So feel free as we come back through our roll call to say, yes, no, doesn't apply, or to spend a minute. But just wanted to lead with that caveat before we ask, how does your organization view collaboration and joint project proposals? Those can be a little bit tricky to put together sometimes. So we'd love to hear, starting with Brittany, how Allegany Franciscan Ministries might respond to those or like to see those.
Yes, so that question really doesn't apply to our organization. So for the sake of our TAL grant program, funding is up to $10,000 for capacity building. So we do not entertain joint proposals for the sake of this program. And just to plug in, we actually do have an open cycle right now for organizations who are interested in funding for capacity building. So if you would like to set up a call to talk, if you're interested, I'll leave information in the chat box. But again, we don't do joint proposals.
Thank you, Brittany. Thank you. I know everyone's looking for those capacity dollars, so you'll get a few emails, I'm sure, after this. Randy at Children's Services Council.
Yeah, we do encourage collaborations. I don't know if I'd describe them necessarily as joint project proposals, because it usually is important that there be a clear fiscal agent. In other words, who are we actually giving the money to? If it's a collaborative proposal, we usually aren't as interested in funding 3 or 4 organizations separately, but rather that they've worked out how they're going to do that. So there's at least a clear fiscal agent. The other suggestion I would have is when you're putting that kind of proposal together is to be as clear as possible about what actual collaboration is occurring. So it's much more than support letters. It's much more than saying we work with and then give a laundry list of organizations. It's really more about what does collaboration really mean? Is it going to be that there's going to be referrals back and forth, or services are actually going to be coordinated, or maybe cases are going to be staffed jointly? What is that actual collaboration? The more clear you can be about that, I think the clearer it is for the funder, and the more it's obvious that there really is collaboration happening.
Yes, thank you. And on that note, we're going to have a question later about things that we might like you might like to see more or less of in proposals that you're all receiving. So we're gonna put a pin on that. Thank you, Randy. Appreciate it. Linda at the Community Foundation, can you tell us a little bit more about joint proposals?
Sure. I would really echo Randy's comments and say that if you want to do a collaborative proposal, it's really important that the roles be delineated really clearly, who's doing what. And as Randy mentioned, there would need to be one fiscal agent. And I would just say that we love the idea of collaboration. Collaboration among organizations can be great. It's also complex. So I would say if you're going to apply to the Community Foundation with a collaborative effort, give us a call first so that we can talk it through with you.
Perfect. Yeah, especially because sometimes those proposals can be a little tricky to put together. So having those conversations, helpful. Christine, what can you add for us from the Community Foundation? I'm sorry, from Extraordinary Charities.
I don't know how you can muster it at this point. Yeah, I think certain projects lend themselves more naturally to those kind of collaborative proposals, and others are really just impossible to address in that kind of situation. But I think we're at a time right now where nothing is off the table. So if you bring us an idea and you're part of our network, we're going to take a look at it, and we're going to sit down with you, and we're going to say, all right, let's figure out how we make this work. I think if we've learned one thing through COVID, it's that no organization is able to do everything it wants to do on its own. So we're really trying to find creative ways to find and encourage and support those partnerships. Is it perfect? No. Is it complicated? Absolutely. But is it something that we're committed to exploring? Yeah, I think we have to. I just don't think that it's possible for an organization to completely do its own thing in this day and age.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And especially I think as community needs are growing and changing, as we are seeing through COVID, that, I think not only do we need more partnerships between organizations and folks like you, but also with each other, to get those needs really met. Thank you for that, Christine.
Sure.
And Beth at Florida Blue, what can you add?
Yes, the answer is yes. And I agree with everything everyone else has said, and I will tell you one thing. There used to be at the very top of the Florida Blue Foundation application, and I don't work for the foundation personally, but there was a sentence that said, are you partnering or collaborating with any other organization? Or a question that said that. So that's been kind of a longstanding thing. I don't know if they're still using it or not, but remember, if you are, and you're talking about it in your application, these applications are not reviewed by anyone at Florida Blue. They go to outside experts in that specific area to actually read and judge, right? So if you were going to do that, clarity is really important. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it.
I think that's a good note probably for all grant applications. We can reiterate that when we come to the next question. But Jillian at Lost Tree.
So it's rare because we're a capital funder, to get partnership requests specifically, but we do ask about partnership in the community. And that has more to do with our reviewers are looking to see, does the agency understand the space that it's working in and understand its niche? And sometimes there is duplication, but there's a reason. And so what we look for is when we ask about partnership or collaboration among agencies, it's all of you, how do you coordinate either whether it's client referral or, project need. For example, I know some of the organizations that we work with that serve individuals with autism, everybody's having some transportation challenges. So we have looked at and provided funding for vans for some of those organizations. So but in those applications, what we've looked for is have we seen that commonality between, what's happening in the system? So again, kind of, not a lot of organizations share buildings or technology or whatever it is, but we do look to see that, make sure you're doing that. And I had thrown something out in the chat too. I just want to reiterate too, because we all do that. So the funders make sure that we're talking to one another to understand where each other is working and not undoing something that's being done or, that somebody has more expertise in. We're going to kind of go to, if I'm going to do anything birth to 5, I'm calling Randy first, so we all do talk as well.
Strengthening the web, as it were. That's fantastic. Megan at Community Services Department, do you entertain joint proposals or collaborative projects?
So we do, they're allowed. I would say they're pretty rare. And I would just echo what other folks have said about making it clear about roles, responsibilities, who is doing what, and the fiscal agent.
Perfect. Tammy with Youth Services, is it the same for you?
It is the same for us. We would only contract with one fiscal agent, but the attorney in me wants to give one other piece of advice, and that is make sure that you're really clear with whoever you're partnering with, what the expectations are. Because the funders, if there's a dispute, and I have seen in past experience where two organizations have come together to do a proposal, and there was a dispute between them. The funders are not going to resolve the dispute. So it's essential that the agencies, you're going to have a contract with your funding source, you need to have a contract with each other, even if it's a short agreement, but you need to have that in place, because I don't think there's any funder that's going to come in and solve the dispute. They're going to end up giving the funds to the fiscal agent, and it goes from there. So that's just my lawyerly word of caution.
We appreciate that. And if I might put you on the spot for a second, Tammy, and it just kind of came to me as you were talking, sometimes organizations find themselves in the position where if they were to get the funding, they would be able to kind of allocate the resources to develop the relationship or the program that they'd like to partner in, but without the funding, they can't really dedicate the time to developing a partnership. So it's a little bit of a chicken and the egg or a cart before the horse type of situation. Can you give, just a word of thought on what that might
even if that was going to be the case, it would almost be like a contingent contract. It would be, this is what this agency is going to do. This is what this agency is going to do in the event that we receive these funds. If we don't receive the funds, everybody walks away and has no responsibility. But you still need to come up with some sort of agreement. And where I've seen it before is in situations where, for whatever reason, an agency is not going to meet the eligibility requirements of a fiscal agent. Either they don't do an annual report, if that's a requirement, or something that they don't do. And so they're going to be providing the service, but they're going to go through a fiscal agent. That relationship really needs to be spelled out for both agency safety.
Yep. So it really behooves everyone to work out those agreements to the extent possible before you ever apply for support. Okay, thank you. Randy, with Quantum, your thoughts on collaborative proposals?
Sorry, my screen was minimized. Not required, certainly encouraged, but not a decision lens that we use for grants. And I think Brandy made a great point before. If you do have a specific collaboration with somebody, more details the better, just in terms of who's responsible, what exactly that looks like. We understand that everybody's got relationships with all the other agencies, but if there is a direct collaboration, if you can detail that for us, that's always helpful.
Perfect, thank you. Nina at Taft, anything to add?
Yeah, no, I think most of it has been said, and I would underscore the need for role clarification. We have an example currently in the city here in New York where we started an inclusive internship program in one of the New York City government agencies. And the partner is a private nonprofit IDD agency, and they actually together developed a formal MOU to ensure that the roles and responsibilities were really clear. Because I think the challenge for the funder too is that the fiscal agent may be the partner that we route the money through, but they actually may not be the one who is accountable for programmatic results. Which is ultimately what we care about. So that's another thing to be aware of as you think about roles and responsibilities. But collaboration is a good thing. It's also complicated. We definitely also have examples where we just have lead nonprofit organizations that then have subcontracts with other partners. So it's a little less of a joint grant application in that way, but there are certainly clear partners in the work.
That makes sense. Thank you for that. Shaheen, how about at United Way?
Yep. So we definitely love to see collaborations between nonprofit agencies, and we understand that it's kind of hard to have a real impact on the community if we're all kind of working in silos or we're just duplicating services. So in the grant proposals, we love to see how organizations are partnering with each other to address the needs of the clients being served. We have funded joint proposals in the past. It's rare, but it's happened. But just to echo everything that's already been said, just keep it simple. No one likes a convoluted grant application. The clearer, the better. Having those clear specifications outlined, including details about what each agency is responsible for doing, sharing the formal MOU with us, and really, again, can't say this enough, identifying that one clear fiscal agent.
You teed me up for the next question. Thank you for that. Our next question for all of our funders, which we'll start with Brittany, is there anything that you would like to see more of or less of in the proposals that you see from nonprofits that are seeking your support, Brittany, at Allegany?
Yes, I would say more of painting a vivid picture when you're writing your application. Oftentimes, yes, I may be the point of contact of a particular program, but I'm not the only one reviewing. So it's important to be mindful that there's other people with different backgrounds reviewing. So you just want to make sure you're painting a very vivid picture, as Beth mentioned earlier. I know sometimes I go out of my way and I may look on the website to get the full picture, but not everyone is going to go on your website or your social media to connect the dots. So just make sure you're painting a very clear picture when you're writing your application.
It's a good tip. Thank you, Brittany. Randy at CSC, what would you like to see more or less of, or what would CSC like to see more or less of?
Well, there's lots of ways to answer this question, so I'll try to just stick to one. But as I mentioned before, we're trying to really look more at getting resident, involvement, resident feedback. So I think one of the things we're looking more and more for in proposals is the voice of the residents in terms of whether there's a need for a program or not, or even what the design of that program is. So we've been asking, we do pre-COVID, we were doing an annual, our request for proposals called the Great Ideas Initiative, and we do plan to start that back up again this year. And one of the things we've often been asking for and tried to refine it over and over again is what was the community's involvement in the identifying of this program and this need and so forth, and really trying to hear that voice from the community. So I guess the reverse of that, what we would like to see less of is organizations or proposals that look like they're kind of diagnosing a problem for another population. So we're going to bring some program to a community because they need it. Well, what we'd rather see is that community really indicating they need that and want the solution that's being brought to them.
That's fascinating, flipping the perspective on that. Thank you, Randy. Yes, that's great. It's a great insight. Linda at the Community Foundation, what would you guys like to see more or less of in your proposals that you receive?
Well, I know for myself, in reviewing this last round, I really kept looking for local data, more local data, instead of generalizations about need or national data. If you're going to do a project for a neighborhood, for example, give us census data. Tell us about the poverty level in that neighborhood, the reading levels at the schools. The more specific you are about that kind of information, it's very helpful to us. And don't forget, we all have boards that we have to answer to, and they want to know why we want to fund or not fund a specific proposal. So having that data is super helpful.
Terrific, to be as specific as possible about the need that you're actually serving with the programs. Very nice. Thank you, Linda. Christine with Extraordinary Charities, how about you?
Yeah, so ours is a little different because we really only provide funding to organizations who are part of our Extraordinary Charities network. So we've spent a lot of time up front building relationships. So I'm almost embarrassed to say how woefully casual our grant application process is. So because it's really just, it's built on relationship. So, for me, it's just, in our situation, it's really, I just want to see more investment in that relationship over the course of a year, rather than just when you need some money.
And I will say woefully casual is a humble description because the vetting process for Extraordinary Charities, you do your due diligence very well in the partners that you pick. So I think for the folks that have come into the fold, you can have that casual relationship because it's already been so heavily researched and vetted. So no, I think that's very responsive with your partners. How about Beth at Florida Blue? Can you speak to that?
Sure. So the first thing when I read this particular question, I wrote in my notes, less fluff, more fact. Don't waste the amount that space you have to write on fluff. And I don't see them before they go anywhere, right? I don't see what you write, what anyone writes, but just take the fluff out of it, right? because you need to get your points across. Another thing as I want to see more of is people reading and rereading what they wrote, because a lot of times they cut and paste. And when they cut and paste, they don't read and reread. And then they're saying things there that has absolutely nothing to do with the grant. And that's one reason. The second reason is for grammar errors, grammar and spelling errors. It's really difficult. I do review grants and scholarships from 4 organizations in Palm Beach County at different times of the year. And so I see this all the time, and it's hard for me when there's all kinds of spelling and grammar errors to give them maximum points in a certain area. You know, when I see that, that's really difficult, especially with spell check and grammar check. That doesn't really need to happen anymore. So the other thing is, like I said, our grants are reviewed outside, and remembering that I may understand what you mean because I'm involved, I'm out there, right? I hear about your organizations, but that doesn't mean the people that are reading the grants outside of the health insurance industry, but just experts in that particular field, let's say it's mental well-being, will know what you mean. The other thing is, if you have a niche, express your niche and be bold, but not verbose. I recently read a grant that it was very bold in what they did, but they were also very verbose, almost bragging. You know, that to me is personally, when I read these grants, as a turnoff. But you can be bold, just do it in a way that's professional, that's going to get your point across and get your point across about your niche. And I did, just so you know, I put in the chat, and the reason I put it in there is specifically to do with this question. The Florida Blue Community Symposium and Sapphire Awards at one point had a grant writing roundtable. So along with everything else from a Harvard trained dentist / doctor, trained both, talking about children and why dental health is important for children, and all this and everything you can imagine. But I don't think you can ever underestimate the importance of a good grant writer. So those are my comments.
All good tips, all good tips. Thank you, Beth. And if I can just ask you to clarify for, just a sentence or two on the niche. You mentioned that a couple of times. Can you elaborate on what you mean by that?
Sure. So if there's something special that your nonprofit does, that let's say it's individuals with disabilities, but let's say it's a specific disability that has to do with mental health, right? And that is your niche. You dive right into that. Talk about it. And if that's what you're asking grant money for, talk about it. Don't talk too much about your overall organization, because anybody can look that up online, right? If you've got something that you're really proud of, go there. Go into that niche and talk about it. And that's why I say no fluff, more facts, right? Use your fluff sentences for your niche.
Perfect. Okay, that's really helpful, because I know some of our agencies here today, they may have a broader umbrella mission or a broader mission that they serve, but if they're applying for support for a specific thing, they should really drill down on that for the sake of clarity in their application. That's helpful. Right. Thank you, Beth.
Right, because you know what I've done before, I always go online and I look up who's applying for the grant. Anybody can do that, right? But it may not go into your niche.
Right. Helpful. Thank you, Beth. Jillian at Law Street, what can you add for us?
So I think we're all echoing sort of the same things, but there's sort of two things that pop up. One, getting to know, it is indicative sometimes when an agency hasn't spent some time getting to know our process or our foundation, sort of how we're set up. Because like some of the others, I have so many volunteers that read, and I'm more of a conduit. So we are overly flexible and overly generous when it comes to anything related to writing and language and deadlines even. Don't quote me on that. Nobody write that down. But with reporting and all of that, but the challenge, you know, and I often say, if you can get your application in even early for our deadline has been the same for almost 40 years. It gives me a chance to take a look at them. What I can't do is the day of, when we do get, I mean, we get about 170 applications every summer. More than half of them come in on the last day. Even if I can see some in draft, but if you can get them in early, sometimes I'll look at them the day after deadline and be like, gosh, if I could have seen this like 24 hours ago, I could have called and said, this isn't going to fly. So let's help retool this. So I think even when foundations are flexible, the sooner you can get things in, the tighter you can stick to the process. It actually helps us a lot, you know, represent you. So that kind of leads me to the relationship piece, because I know we keep mentioning relationship. And I think if I've noticed anything over the last few years, and this is our foundation and our process and sort of how we operate, is almost this sense that relationship means that we have to be friends in order for us to fund you. And that's not the case. And I mean that in the most loving way, that, you know, we have such a great community, but you don't even have to like me, and we'll be able to still provide you funding. So, you know, I'll get a lot of the, hey, let's meet for cocktails, and I would if I could, but you know, with 170 agencies, it's not good for my liver. But you know, we want to work with you, and it's my job. I mean, I work for a nonprofit, you know, this just happens to be my job, is to connect people with resources to give away to your organization. So the more that I really understand you in a meaningful way, not that, you know, catching up socially is a bad thing, but I don't want to mistake the fact that when we say relationship, it doesn't mean that we, you know, you don't have to cultivate me the way you would an individual donor. So again, I'm paid staff, and I would love to say I'm a philanthropist, but I'm not at all. So that piece of it, I think, has been something I've been trying to convey, because I think it became even harder during COVID, since we weren't seeing people out and about and everyone wanting to reach out. So I think that's it.
No, and I think that is an important note for folks, that, you know, building relationships with foundation grantors is a very different animal than building relationships with individual donors in the community, the folks that you are, you know, inviting to your gala. Not certainly that some of our foundations wouldn't be welcome and may not have a great time or anything like that, but it's a different type of relationship. And I think it kind of goes back to the process by which you're coming to understand their work. So many of you today have talked about wanting to understand the need, wanting to have data about how and who you're serving locally, and having outcome-oriented processes, which is very different than often, not 100% of the time, but so often our relationships with our individual donors are about heartstrings and about sort of a personal calling. And that is very different than everything that we're talking about here today. So I'm really glad that you brought that up. Thank you so much, Jillian. And Megan at Community Services Department, what can you add about the applications that you'd like to see more or less of?
Sure. So a couple things. For our financially assisted agencies, we would love to see new agencies apply for funds. We typically have the same agencies apply over and over again, and we're happy to fund those agencies. But we would love to see new agencies come in and receive funding. And then just would love for people to take advantage of the resources that we've made available. One, just even reading the NOFO guidance. I know that it can be pretty thick sometimes, but it really is your key to being successfully funded, is just reading the directions. Really being aware of what we're asking and ensuring that you're really answering the question that we're asking. And then I think just finally, just talking about your outcomes. We set people up to answer that question, but it's really helpful to know, how did the funds that we've provided you in the past, what is the return on investment? How did you use those funds to impact individuals? It's good for us to see those things when we ask that question.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much. Tammy Fields at Youth Services, you're up.
I would agree with almost everything everybody else has already said. We'll add one thing, and that is try and work on your proposals before the last day. Not for us, we wouldn't be able to review it and give you feedback but it avoids technology problems. Almost all proposals are now being submitted electronically. And it's heartbreaking when an agency has some sort of snafu because they're still typing at 4:50 when it's due at 5 o'clock. And as a government agency who has to have certain standards, they miss that. And it's an agency we may have funded before, and we can't do anything about it. So don't wait to the last minute to do your proposals. It's probably one of the biggest piece of advice. And the other thing that we look for is there's two areas that we ask about that I'd love to see fleshed out more in proposals. One is how you're addressing equity, diversity, inclusion. Going back to the niche comment, if you are serving a community in the area of special needs, but it's special needs for Guatemalan population specifically, make sure you're detailing that so that we know that there's a population that normally isn't getting service, and you're going to be dealing with that. And whatever equity trainings your agency staff has gotten is important to us. And the other is the delivery of trauma-informed care. And regardless of whether you're doing mental health services or you're doing aftercare programs, there's still an element of being aware that so many of the youth that come to many of our programs have experienced trauma of some sort. And our kids who have special needs, a lot of them have experienced a lot of trauma. And how you address that and make sure that your staff is aware of trauma and how they would approach the people that they serve. Those are important things in our application.
Thank you. Thank you. Some of those qualifications we kind of gloss over as we're filling out applications to get to the meat of the program or the outcome. So thank you that's meaningful for your evaluation. Randy, a quantum, things you'd like to see more or less of in applications?
A couple of things. So our application format is intentionally designed to try to be as concise and brief as possible. It's limited in characters and words, so you can't put a 20-page application in there. The system literally won't allow you to do that. So, and the reason that we do that, I guess, a couple things. We certainly don't want to waste your time, but we want to make sure that the information that we get is very well thought through and how it's written and how it's described to us. And that brings me to kind of one of my main things that I do see a lot in reading the applications is our audience, certainly the staff that work at the foundation is sort of the main audience. But we have to take those applications and put them in front of our committee members and our board members. We do have a few medical doctors on the board. We do have a few with healthcare administration background, but they are not PhD level practitioners or professionals currently. Well, I shouldn't say currently. I mean, some of them are PhD currently working in the field, but they're not used to seeing or reading very technical PhD level proposals about certain programs or certain populations. So when you're writing this, and when you're writing these some of these applications, and I'm not calling anybody out on this call. I'm not actually the agencies that I'm thinking of. I know they're not here, but sometimes it's difficult for us to translate PhD terminology and a PhD level description, which is fantastic. I mean, it speaks to your expertise in the area, right? But we have to then translate that to someone who doesn't know anything about this. So sometimes that can be difficult for us to do. So if you can help us, if you are submitting, some sort of, an application, help us put language in there. We know that you're an expert already, right? Just by virtue of your background and what you do, but help us by putting some language in there that, kind of simplifies it a little bit and makes it a little bit easier for folks to understand. And then the one other point I'll say as well, since we just have an open application and we don't do RFPs or calls for specific type of proposals, we'll get 30 or 40 proposals from all different areas, right? So every different area, every different proposal, every project can detail a need. but we don't match up our funding recommendations, or we don't make funding recommendations based on who has the greatest need. We just don't. We can't, because we'd be pitching homeless people against people who don't have anything to eat. I mean, it doesn't work that way. So when you talk about the need, certainly address it to a degree, but just recognize that that's not necessarily like the main winning component for us in terms of a grant application that we recommend for funding. Because, all of us have been working in this space long enough. I've been a funder for, working in a foundation for 10 years, but prior to that, I was in the nonprofit sector for another 15 years. So, everybody has, unfortunately, there's a lot of need out there, right? Talk about what you are going to try to do, more so that part of it, as opposed to, three paragraphs about this acute need that you're seeing in the community, which we probably see as well, unfortunately. Just kind of a different angle. Hopefully that helps.
No, and I think it's helpful too to point out that I don't think that that the special needs IDD space is so different from a PhD medical doctor space, and that there are some things that are kind of jargony or that are a little bit lingo-y. If you're serving folks with IDD every day, you absolutely know what the acronyms stand for. If you're a reviewer who's got a pile of 40 applications this cycle, you may not have any idea. So that's a good tip for everyone, to make sure that you're bringing your language to a place where maybe people who aren't on the inside can still help you understand it.
Kelsey, if I can just add one thing, not to keep going, but the other part of that too is, and I think everybody in here is smarter than I am, but when you make a statement in a grant proposal or a grant application, that's if you need to back it up with a citation or reference, please do that. Otherwise, sometimes we spend time looking for that and then we don't find it, or we can't locate it, and that would lead us to question the premise for some of what you're proposing. So if you are, approaching this from a level of, it's not a dissertation, right? But if you are making points that need to be backed up, please give us the data or the source for that some way, somehow, via email or in the application or somewhere, just so we don't have to hunt it down ourselves.
Cite your sources. Thank you, Randy. Appreciate it. Nina at Taft. I know it's a little different for you because it's all solicited, but.
It is, and that's actually what I was going to speak to, the kind of pros and cons of that. But before I do that, I just want to acknowledge I have the benefit of having listened to most of my peers here and being somewhat last in line. It is exhausting listening to each of these stipulations from each of the different funders, right? And I think we have to be so mindful of that. And part of the reason that we take this proactive approach and invite proposals, one is we just don't have the staff capacity to just have an RFP process or take applications unsolicited. But part of it is because we develop those relationships along the way, so that really by the time we get to the point of a grant application, that is one part of the puzzle. It is not the thing that carries necessarily the most weight, because my team actually then does a bunch of work to translate what's in that proposal for our board. And as grantees in this audience know, there's a lot of back and forth that happens, lots of conversation that happens even after the application is submitted. But I would say the two things that perhaps are transferable to others is that I think, Jillian, it was you who said it's about the work. So we tried to, everyone writes a different kind of grant proposal. We tried to sift through whatever language it is and what is specific to the grantee, and really focus on what is actually happening and what is the benefit of the private dollar in this work. And so I would say, in addition to really getting better around outcomes, not just activities, right? You're not just going to purchase the van, but what is that going to yield? Is also an increasing reflection and understanding of what does the work cost? How does the private dollar leverage the public dollar? This is a field that is predominantly funded with public dollars. There is tremendous value in the private dollar. So how trying to get at that in the proposal, I think, is, at least from our perspective, very valuable.
Thank you for that. So many great points there, Nina. Thank you. And Sha'een, to close this question out.
Yeah, so over the past few years, United Way of Palm Beach County has really increased our focus on outcomes. I know several of you have mentioned this before, but most of our target areas actually have required outcomes that our funded programs have to report on. Outcomes really do help you tell your story, and they highlight the importance of the work that you do. So while, you know, we love hearing about the activities and the client stories, please keep sending them. I promise I read them, they're amazing. We really are looking for clarity about how the work that you do changes lives. You know, connecting clients to resources is a very important activity, but then how do you follow up to ensure that that connection really made a difference for them? So really showing us how you measure the impact of your services is critical in our grant applications. Another thing I'll say that, you know, I'll echo, I think it's been said a few times before, our grant review process and our allocation process at United Way is spearheaded by volunteers. And these volunteers may have never heard of your agency or your program before. So clearly explaining your program in a way that can be easily understood by anyone is very important. The last thing you want is for a volunteer reviewer to walk away, you know, kind of scratching their head, wondering what you do or what you're requesting the funding to support.
I see some heads nodding to that one. Thank you. You know, in the interest of time, we only have a little short few minutes left. So I have a challenge for our funding panel. We're going to ask our last question today, and if you can keep it to 30 seconds to give us your best answer, we'll see if we can beat the clock and close this out on time. So our last question of the day is, many of our audience members, although you know some of them are already your partners, but many of our audience members work with organizations that may be interested in seeking your partnership. Do you have recommendations or insights about building a relationship? We already know not to take Jillian out for drinks with your organization. And Brittany, we're gonna give you 30 seconds. Can you start us off for Allegany?
Yes, I would say give me a call, send me an email, and we can schedule some time to chat, especially being that I don't live in the Palm Beach area. I'm in Tampa Bay. So please give me a call and I would love to develop a relationship with you.
Beautiful. Call Brittany. Randy at CSC, you're up.
I would say participate in any of the community conversations we do have available. Also, I'll put in the chat, sign up for our Monday morning update, which is where you get all the sort of news, not just about us, but everything related to early childhood. And you can just sign up and get that email. I would say call us and develop a relationship, but we don't take unsolicited proposals. And as a government agency, everything is always going to be done by a request for proposals. So, you know, we're always glad to hear from folks, but I'm not sure that's going to lead directly to funding.
Makes sense. The community conversations, are those included in those Monday updates?
Yes, and most of them are in conjunction with Tammy and the Birth to 22 initiative.
Perfect. Okay, we'll look for that in the chat.
Yeah, that was in the chat.
Oh, thank you. Okay, Linda at the Community Foundation, building a relationship.
Yeah, I would say just send me an email, or many of you know Daryl Houston, who's been here a long time. You can send Daryl an email and just let us know you'd like to chat, and we'll schedule something.
Perfect. Perfect. Reach out to the Linda and Daryl at Community Foundation. Christine, Extraordinary Charities.
Yeah, same. Our criteria for inclusion, beginning are simple. 3 years or more in existence, file a 990 with a Palm Beach County address, and have an annual budget of less than $3 million. Go to our website, apply to be part of the EC family, or swing by our nonprofit center and we'll chat.
Perfect. Go to the website, go to the resource center. Perfect. Beth at Florida Blue, how do we build a relationship with you?
The first thing is go on the Florida Blue Foundation website and sign up for the newsletter. So you can get the regular updates and what's going on. It helps you learn more about the foundation and more about Florida Blue. The second thing is call me. And I'm happy to set up a time to chat with you.
Fabulous. Newsletters and phone calls all to Beth. Jillian at Lost Tree.
Same. Visit our website. The funding guidelines are up there, and give me a call sometime after Mother's Day and before the end of June.
Okay. So it's the summertime reach out for Jillian. Perfect. Megan at Community Services Department.
You can get added to our FAA communication list so that you're aware of when our funding opportunities open. And if you really want to geek out on what we're actually doing, attend our Citizens Advisory Committee meeting. You can get updates about where we are in our funding process almost every month.
Perfect. And I saw some notes on FAA in the chat as well. So folks can look for that. Tammy at Youth Services.
I put in the chat, my recommendation is get familiar with our organization before you call us and ask what it's about. It makes sense. And also get familiar with Parts of 22 because our funding is based on the priorities that were established. That we're happy to have conversations with agencies, but we're in the same boat as Randy. We don't really do it unsolicited. We do it through a NOFO process. So going to our website and learning more there, follow us on social media, and you'll be up to date.
Gotcha. Okay. Randy at Quantum.
Yeah, just what's been said before, certainly take a look at our website. We're actually in the process of sort of refreshing that right now. It's not going to look too different, just, kind of updating some of the language, maybe some new pictures, things like that, and send us an email and we'd be happy to connect.
Awesome. Thank you, Randy. Nina at Taft.
Sorry, yes. Hi, reach out if talk to others if you can't get to us to me directly, but reach out, invite us to see the work, to share about your work. We don't have boots on the ground in Florida, unfortunately. We do come to visit though, and we, again, rely on a lot of word of mouth. So ask how to get to us.
Perfect. Thank you, Nina. And Shane, no pressure, but 30 seconds. Can you do it?
No problem. I would just say volunteer. You can volunteer at an event. You can register your agency to get volunteers for an upcoming event. You can participate in our affinity groups, become a mentor, or you can email me and be added to our bidders list so that you can be notified whenever our next funding opportunity becomes available. And of course, the website.
Funders, thank you so much for your time on this panel today, for the insights. People in the chat are already sharing their appreciation for how much you have added to their arsenal as they go in and look at their partnerships for their programs. I'm going to turn it back over to Sharon to close us out for the day, but thank you, thank you, thank you.
Kelsey, could I make one quick comment? I put it in the chat, but for those who are applying to government agencies, know that all of the proposals that are submitted after we've made our funding recommendations are public record. So if you want to see past ones that were successful, make a request and you can see them, and that can be a great learning experience.
That's a great insight. Thank you, Tammy, and a great resource for everybody who's crafting their next proposal. Thank you. Sharon, are you out there?
I'm actually going to turn it over to Carrie.
I just want to say thank you, Kelsey. I just put a note in the chat. You are an amazing moderator. I really enjoyed it. You did an amazing job. It's really hard to work through 11 different funders here on this panel, and you're so eloquent with your questioning. So thank you. And thanks to all the funders taking the time out of your day. I know you all are very busy, but I think that this was a great platform for all of our agencies to really get a foundational understanding of what you all are looking for, and to follow up in the years to come and develop some strategies around their future proposals. So thank you everybody for coming. And if anybody has any follow-up questions, you're welcome to submit them to us. And we hope to do this again, maybe seasonally, coming up in the years to come. So thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.